The babysitter called at 2 a.m. asking, "Are you sure your ex-husband doesn't have a key to your house?" "He's inside. Right now." Zara's voice cracked through my phone speaker. I can hear him moving furniture downstairs. "The kids are hidden in your closet, but he's calling their names, saying Mommy lied about Daddy, that he just wants to talk. Mrs. Blackwood, I think he's coming upstairs." My blood turned to ice in the Seattle hotel room. Michael didn't have keys. We'd changed every lock after the restraining order 6 months ago. But I could hear heavy footsteps through the phone, getting closer to where my children were hiding. Lily was 5, Connor barely 3. They knew to be quiet when Daddy used his angry voice, but for how long? "Call 911 now," I whispered, already grabbing my car keys. "Don't wait for me to drive back." He violated the restraining order. This is breaking and entering with children present. But Mrs. Blackwood, what if the police believe him? What if he says he's just checking on his kids? You know how he talks to authorities. Zara had witnessed Michael's charm during custody exchanges. The reasonable voice, the concerned father act, the way he made me look like the hysterical ex-wife whenever police got involved. I was running through the hotel hallway now, phone pressed to my ear. The restraining order is crystal clear. He cannot enter my house under any circumstances, but my hands shook because I knew how these situations played out. Michael was a successful architect, well-dressed, articulate. Zara was 19, looked 16, and my kids would be confused and scared when police arrived. The phone went silent for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Then Zara's terrified whisper, "He found us. He's outside the bedroom door saying the kids need to come talk to Daddy, that you've been poisoning them against him." Lily's starting to cry. She's asking why Daddy sounds mad if he just wants to talk. "Keep that door locked no matter what he says," I commanded, speeding through empty Seattle streets toward the highway. Michael is escalating. He's never broken in before. Something changed, and opening that door could make everything worse. Through the phone, I heard Michael's voice turn syrupy sweet. "Lily, sweetheart, Daddy drove all this way because I missed you so much. Mommy's not here to tell you what to say. We can have ice cream for breakfast and watch cartoons like before she made all these silly rules. Just unlock the door, baby girl. Daddy's not angry at you." That voice made my stomach turn. The same tone he'd used right before the worst incidents. Sweet words hiding barely controlled rage, promises of treats masking threats. I'd heard it 1,000 times during our marriage. Now he was using it on our children. "Mrs. Blackwood, he's doing something to the door handle." I hear metal scraping. Connor's asking if Daddy's going to break down the door like he broke Mommy's phone. How does a 3-year-old remember that? Zara sounded like she was crying now. "Because it happened 6 weeks ago," I said grimly, taking the highway on-ramp at dangerous speed. Michael had smashed my phone during our last fight, right in front of the kids. The judge had used that incident to grant the restraining order, but Michael's lawyer claimed it was property damage, not violence. Just a man frustrated by his ex-wife's unreasonable behavior. The scratching sound through the phone intensified. "I think he's picking the lock," Zara whispered. "Professional tools, not just random objects. He came prepared for this." The kids heard the noise and now they're both crying. Lily keeps saying she'll be good if Daddy stops being scary. She thinks this is her fault somehow. At 5 years old, my daughter was already learning to blame herself for her father's violence. The pattern was starting early, the way it always did in families like ours. Children absorbing guilt for adult behavior, thinking they could prevent abuse by being perfect. I pressed harder on the gas pedal, knowing I was still 2 hours away from helping them. Suddenly, the scraping stopped. The door handle turned with a sharp click. "He's in," Zara breathed. "He got through the lock. We're behind boxes in the closet, but there's nowhere else to hide." He's looking around the room, checking under the bed. "Mrs. Blackwood, what do I do if he finds us? Do I try to reason with him? Do I let him see the kids are okay so maybe he'll leave?" "Don't reason with him," I said firmly. "Don't negotiate. If he finds you, just keep the kids behind you and tell him I'm driving home right now, that we can all talk when I arrive. Stall for time until police get there." But privately, I was terrified Michael had finally snapped completely. His new girlfriend, Brooke, was pregnant, due in 3 months. She'd been filling his head with ideas about taking my children, about being the mother they deserved. She wanted to play house with someone else's kids while having her own perfect family. The pregnancy had made Michael desperate to prove he was a good father, and desperation made him dangerous. The sound of boxes being moved came through the phone. Michael's voice, no longer sweet. "Where are you hiding my children, Zara? Why are you keeping them from me? I'm their father. I have rights. Stop filling their heads with lies about me being dangerous. They need to hear the truth about what their mother has been doing." I could hear Lily sobbing, calling for Mommy. Connor had gone completely silent, which terrified me more than crying. He shut down during conflict, retreating somewhere inside himself where the shouting couldn't reach. At 3 years old, he was already learning dissociation as a survival skill. The psychological damage Michael was inflicting would last decades. "There you are." Michael's voice turned gentle again as he found them in the closet. "Hey there, little ones. Daddy missed you so much. Why are you hiding from me? Did someone tell you Daddy was scary? Because that's not true at all. Daddy just wants to spend time with his babies. How about we go for a drive and get some McDonald's? Won't that be fun?" The manipulation was breathtaking. Within seconds, he'd shifted from violent intruder to loving father, reframing a home invasion as a surprise visit. But I could hear the edge underneath his sweet words, the barely controlled anger waiting to explode if things didn't go his way. "Daddy, are you going to hurt Mommy again?" Lily's tiny voice asked through the phone. Is that why Zara wouldn't open the door? Are we in trouble for hiding? The innocence in her question broke my heart. At 5, she already understood that Daddy being angry meant Mommy getting hurt. She'd witnessed enough violence to recognize the pattern, even though I'd tried so hard to shield both kids from the worst incidents. No child should carry that knowledge. Oh, sweetheart. Michael's voice was honey smooth now. Daddy would never hurt anyone. Mommy just tells you stories to make you scared of me because she's angry about the divorce. But you don't need to be afraid. How about we go see Ashley? She's excited to meet you properly. You're going to have a baby sister soon, and we want you to help us get ready. Ashley, not Brooke. I'd had the name wrong, but the situation was exactly what I'd feared. Michael's pregnant girlfriend wanted instant access to my children, and Michael was willing to commit felonies to give it to her. This wasn't just about seeing the kids. This was about taking them. Mr. Davidson, Zara's voice was braver than I expected given the circumstances. The kids need to stay here tonight. Mrs. Blackwood will be home in a few hours, and I'm responsible for keeping them safe until then. I know you want to see them, but this isn't the right way. Look how upset they are. Don't tell me how to handle my own children. Michael snapped, his mask slipping instantly. You're 19 years old, Zara. You don't know anything about parenting or what these kids need. Their mother has been poisoning them against me for months with lies about domestic violence. I never hurt anyone. Everything that happened during our marriage was mutual conflict, and she escalated situations just as much as I did. The revisionist history was staggering but not surprising. In Michael's version of events, 12 years of emotional and physical abuse became minor disagreements where I was somehow equally responsible. He genuinely believed his own lies, which made him even more dangerous. I was flying down Highway 5 now, doing 90 in a 65 zone. My phone showed 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Probably the 911 dispatcher trying to get more information. But I couldn't take my attention away from what was happening in my house. Couldn't risk losing connection with the only adult trying to protect my children. Through the speaker, I heard Michael's voice getting louder. We're leaving now. Ashley has the nursery almost ready, and she wants to show the kids where their baby sister will sleep. They can help pick out clothes and toys. It'll be good for them to feel involved in building our new family instead of staying trapped in all this negativity and legal drama. He was really planning to take them. This wasn't just a custody violation or a moment of poor judgment. Michael had come prepared with lockpicks and a destination. He'd calculated that I was out of town, that Zara couldn't physically stop him, that he'd have hours before anyone could respond. The pregnancy had pushed him over the edge into full-scale parental kidnapping. Mr. Davidson, please, Zara said, and I could hear her moving, probably trying to keep herself between Michael and the kids. They're scared. This isn't how you want them to remember spending time with you. Let's all go downstairs and wait for Mrs. Blackwood. She's driving back from Seattle right now. You can work this out with her directly. I don't want to work anything out with her, Michael snarled. She's had 6 months to be reasonable about custody arrangements, and instead she got restraining orders and supervised visits. She's trying to erase me from my children's lives so she can play victim in court, but I'm still their father, and I'm not going to let her destroy my relationship with them. The entitlement in his voice was chilling. Michael genuinely believed he was the victim in this situation, that breaking into my house was justified because I'd been unreasonable about custody. He couldn't see past his own wounded ego to recognize the terror he was inflicting on our children. Suddenly I heard new voices through the phone. Adult voices, authoritative and calm. Police had arrived. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly swerved off the highway. Help was there. My children were going to be safe. But as the voices got clearer, my relief turned to dread. I could hear Michael's tone shift instantly to reasonable and concerned. Officers, thank goodness you're here. I was worried sick about my children. Their babysitter locked them in a closet and wouldn't let me see them. I know there's been some confusion about custody arrangements, but I'm just a father trying to make sure my kids are okay. The manipulation was masterful. Within seconds, Michael had reframed the entire situation. He wasn't a home invader. He was a concerned parent. Zara wasn't protecting the children. She was keeping them from their father. The broken locks and forced entry became evidence of his desperation to reach kids who were being hidden from him. Sir, can you show us some identification? One of the officers asked. And ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly what happened here tonight. I held my breath as Zara explained about the lockpicking, about hiding with the kids, about Michael forcing the bedroom door after they'd barricaded themselves inside. But I knew how her story would sound to police officers seeing a well-dressed man in an expensive suit claiming parental concern versus a teenage babysitter who looked like she was barely out of high school. My phone started buzzing with another call. 911 dispatch, probably trying to coordinate with the responding officers. I answered on speaker while staying connected to the situation at my house. This is Rebecca Blackwood. I'm the homeowner. My ex-husband Michael Davidson broke into my house and is currently threatening my babysitter and children in violation of a restraining order. The dispatcher confirmed that units were on scene and taking statements. She asked if I wanted to file charges for breaking and entering, violation of protective orders, and attempted custodial interference. Absolutely, I said. He came prepared with lock-picking tools and stated his intention to take the children to his girlfriend's house without permission. Through the other line, I could hear Michael talking to the officers. His voice was calm and reasonable, explaining that he'd been concerned about the children's welfare after their mother had been making increasingly erratic demands through their shared custody app. He claimed I'd been using the kids as weapons in our divorce proceedings, that he'd only wanted to verify they were safe and well cared for. The officers asked to see the restraining order documentation. Michael's lawyer had coached him well for this moment. He expressed surprise at the specific language of the order, claimed there had been miscommunication about what constituted violation, said he thought wellness checks on his children were still permitted, even with restrictions in place. But the physical evidence told a different story. The front door frame was splintered where he'd forced entry. The bedroom door lock was broken from his efforts to reach the closet where Zara and the kids had been hiding. Lock-picking tools were scattered on the bedroom floor where he'd dropped them after successfully breaching their safe space. One of the officers, a woman with a kind voice, was interviewing the children separately from the adults. I could hear Lily's small voice explaining that Daddy had scared them by breaking the door, that she and Connor had hidden in the closet because they remembered what happened when Daddy got angry. Connor, despite being barely 3, confirmed that Daddy had broken Mommy's things before, that loud voices meant someone might get hurt. The children's testimony was devastating to Michael's narrative. These weren't kids who'd been coached to fear their father. They were trauma survivors who'd learned to recognize dangerous escalation patterns. Their innocent recounting of previous violence undermined every claim Michael made about being a gentle, concerned parent. Within 30 minutes, Michael was in handcuffs being read his rights for multiple felony charges: breaking and entering, violation of a protective order, attempted custodial interference, possession of burglary tools, and child endangerment. His bail would be set high, given the clear evidence of premeditation and flight risk. As the police led him away, Michael's composure finally cracked completely. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he shouted toward my phone, somehow knowing I was listening. "She's manipulated everyone into believing her victim narrative. Those are my children, and I'll be out on bail tomorrow. My lawyer will prove this was all a setup. Ashley and I can provide a stable home for them, not this broken situation with babysitters and restraining orders." The threat was clear. Michael considered this a temporary setback, not a permanent consequence. He was already planning his next move, his next attempt to gain access to children who were afraid of him. The system had protected us tonight, but for how long? Zara was crying now that the immediate danger was over. "Mrs. Blackwood, I was so scared." He sounded completely different than during regular custody visits. Like he really believed he had the right to take them. The way he talked about you, like you were the villain keeping him from his children. And Lily and Connor knew exactly what to do. They've been through this before, haven't they? The drive home gave me 2 hours to process what had happened and plan for what came next. Michael would make bail within 24 hours, probably with additional restrictions added to the restraining order. But restrictions were just paper, unless someone was willing to enforce them. I needed security cameras, better locks, maybe even a safe room where the kids and babysitter could retreat if this happened again. My sister Julia met me at the house with her husband and teenage son. They'd driven down from Portland the moment I'd called, ready to stay as long as needed. Having family support made everything feel less overwhelming, less like I was fighting this battle completely alone. Julia took one look at the broken doors and said she was calling a locksmith first thing in the morning. The police had photographed everything, documented the timeline, taken statements from Zara and both children. The case against Michael was solid, but I knew from experience that solid cases didn't always result in meaningful consequences. Family court judges were reluctant to completely terminate parental rights unless there was clear evidence of severe physical abuse or sexual assault. But this time felt different. The premeditation, the lockpicking tools, the stated intention to take the children to his girlfriend's house. It painted a picture of escalating behavior that even custody-friendly judges would have trouble ignoring. Michael had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The kids were exhausted but wired with adrenaline, unable to sleep despite everything they'd been through. We made a fort in the living room with blankets and pillows, and I held them while they processed what had happened. Lily asked if Daddy was going to jail, if he would still be angry when he got out. Connor mostly stayed quiet, but he wouldn't let go of my hand. Zara refused payment for the extra hours, saying she was just glad everyone was safe. But I could see the trauma in her eyes, the way she kept glancing toward the windows, even though police had cleared the property. She'd been forced to protect my children from their own father, and that responsibility had changed something in her permanently. 3 days later, Michael's attorney called with an unexpected development. Ashley had left him after learning about the break-in. She'd packed up and moved back in with her parents, saying she couldn't raise a child with someone who commits felonies to get access to his ex-wife's children. The pregnancy that had triggered Michael's desperation was now the thing that cost him his new relationship. Michael posted bail, but violated the expanded restraining order within a week by driving past my house repeatedly and parking across the street. Security cameras captured everything, including him sitting in his car for hours just watching the house where his children lived. The judge revoked his bail and remanded him to custody pending trial. The kids started trauma therapy to process not just that night, but years of witnessing domestic violence they'd been too young to understand at the time. The therapist explained that children often blame themselves when parents fight, thinking they could have prevented conflict by being better or different. Both Lily and Connor carried guilt that belonged entirely to the adult who chose violence over healthy communication. 6 months later, Michael pled guilty to avoid a trial that would have exposed Ashley to testimony about their relationship and his escalating behavior during her pregnancy. He received 18 months in prison, followed by supervised probation, mandatory anger management, and court-ordered therapy before any custody rights could be considered for reinstatement. The house felt safe again with our upgraded security system, but the psychological healing took much longer. Lily stopped having nightmares about Daddy breaking down doors. Connor started talking more freely about his feelings instead of shutting down when adults raised their voices. They learned that some people make bad choices that hurt the people they claim to love, and that protecting yourself from those people isn't mean or wrong. Zara became part of our extended family, the young woman who'd risked her own safety to keep my children secure when their father decided laws didn't apply to him. Her courage at 19 years old had prevented a kidnapping that could have traumatized my kids for life. Some heroes carry badges and guns, others carry babysitting supplies and the determination to protect children who aren't their own, even when terrified. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now, and let me know your take in the comments.